It feels like just yesterday that Link made his way back into our lives through The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. And with its sequels set to hit stores sometime next year, it goes without saying that fans are pretty excited about what else Hyrule has to offer. But what do we actually know about Breath of the Wild 2? And why do some players have concerns? For all this and more, stay tuned. First of all, let's talk about when we can expect to get our hands on the sequel. For those of you who don't know, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is still considered to be the greatest game in the history of the Nintendo Switch. And that's pretty crazy considering how both Super Smash Bros. And Animal Crossing are among the titles Link and his friends defeated. The game was released back in March of 2017 and quickly went on to achieve full marks from reputable sources like IGN. And with an insane open world experience on offer, this was really no surprise. With the success of the title came a pretty easy decision from Nintendo Entertainment. They had to follow it up with a sequel, and according to reports, the sequel was going to be set to release sometime this year. But that was before the coronavirus pandemic rocked the world and caused a number of our lovable titles to be delayed. From the sound of things, the spread of the COVID-19, along with other internal factors, has delayed the release date of the sequel for some time next year, and as of right now, that's all we really know. That being said, Summer Game Fest and E3 are coming up in the near future, and a little bird has told us that Nintendo might have some news on when we can actually expect Link to return. Before that happens though, all we can do is guess, and by the look of the trailer that have already been released, we're thinking of a spring 2023 release at best. That being said, Nintendo has still refused to tell us the name of this anticipated sequel. Although the rest of the world is still calling it Breath of the Wild 2, we are going stir crazy not knowing what the true name of the sequel will be. This is really uncharted water when it comes to the gaming industry, which is usually pretty transparent when it comes to the naming of upcoming sequels. We know precisely what to expect from the latest installment of the God of War franchise, for example, not just because of the way its predecessor ended, but because of the fact that it was called God of War Ragnarok since its first announcement a couple of years back. Breath of the Wild 2, on the other hand, is rumored to be called something else. And the fact that Nintendo is still keeping it a secret makes us think that the title has a lot to do with where the story will be going this time around. From the trailer footage that's been made available on YouTube, we can see that the sequel will be dealing with the spread of some darkened power. Unlike the first modern installment of the franchise, which saw Link waking up with amnesia, the sequel will no doubt be kicking off from where we left things last. You know, with King Roam and the four champions watching over Link and Zelda after the defeat of Ganondorf, and since the naming of the sequel is likely going to give the plot away, Nintendo are probably waiting for E3. That being said, what are our expectations of the plot of the Breath of the Wild 2? All we really have to pull from is a creepy announcement trailer that was released at E3 2019, as well as the full trailer that made its way to us at last year's E3. The announcement trailer gave very little away. It showed a short clip of Link and Zelda exploring some underground chamber with some eerie runes set upon the walls. Upon encountering a skeletal figure surrounded by red energy, we see a castle off in the distance crack, causing the birds of Hyrule to flutter away in a hurry. The trailer of E3 2021 showed off a lot more from Nintendo though, with the return of that red energy somehow leading to the disappearance of Zelda. Link falls through the skies of Hyrule with the task of finding her and returning the world to the way it used to be. And by the look of things, Hyrule is going to be far more open world than it was before, if that's even possible. There's various images of Link soaring through the air on his glider, along with beautiful views of the things that can be found when exploring the fantastical realm. In essence, it looks like more of what made the Breath of the Wild such a winner among fans and critics. But in true The Legend of Zelda sense, there appears to be something dark coming up from the underground, and we have a feeling this is where the plot of the sequel will be coming from. In the end, this will have everything to do with the mysterious red energy from before. This was emphasized as far back as the announcement trailer after all, which means that Nintendo had a plan for the mysterious red energy when the sequel was first brought into development. But what could it be? Well, some fans seem to believe that this is the true form of the evil that has been behind Ganondorf's plans for the last couple of installments. The Legend of Zelda as a franchise has become somewhat stuck in a loop of sorts. Each installment sees Zelda being kidnapped or disappearing, along with Ganondorf ultimately being behind the capture of the princess. Makes sense considering how she was always meant to lock him up with her powers, but in the end, it's Link who saves Hyrule and ensures that Ganondorf is no longer a problem. At least until the next installment when things begin over again. Now, if the rumors are to be believed, Breath of the Wild 2 might actually be changing things for the better. Instead of focusing on the power of Ganondorf, it may be looking instead at the corrupting power behind him. In fact, Link might actually be tasked with the saving of Ganondorf this time around, making him a playable character at some point during the runtime of the sequel. We're not sure whether there's any truth to this, but it goes without saying that Nintendo have to surprise fans if they want the sequel to be as brilliantly received as the last. Either way, Breath of the Wild 2 is looking to have some fantastic game mechanics, which is really nothing new considering how critically acclaimed the first modern installment of the franchise was. There are actually 3 recent patents filed by Nintendo that could give us some more knowledge on what to expect from the gameplay of Breath of the Wild 2. But keep in mind that these are just assumptions fans have been making. We don't actually know whether they will be utilized in the end or not. The first patent has to do with the performance of a special action while a character is falling, and the diagram attached to the patent shows Link in a similar falling stance as he was in the E3 trailer we spoke about earlier. Suffice to say, free falling is going to be an actual mechanic, and we can't wait to see what follows it. The second patent has to do with another ability that causes some objects to return to their previous positions in time. We saw a bit of this in the trailer of the game where Link transports a rolling spike ball back in time so that it connects against the enemies that fired it at him. Reversing the trajectory of an object is a pretty trippy ability, which makes us think that time dilation may have something to do with the overall plot as well. The third patent then describes an ability whereby Link moves through objects as if he was a ghost, something else we've seen from the trailer of E3 2021. So then who are the true villains of the franchise? Well, in short, it appears to be the Twilight, a shadow people who are actually descended from the Hylians, who tried to take the power from the Triforce for themselves. That glowing blue hand from the trailer seems to be wrapped in twisted shapes, reminiscent of Twilight architecture after all. And we know that Nintendo was at one point aiming at an alien invasion of Hyrule. Why not replace this with a bunch of teleporting shadow creatures that are hell-bent on bringing Hyrule to its knees? And, as we said earlier, it could have been the Twilight from the start corrupting Ganondorf with that mysterious red energy. Either way, it sounds like there's a new villain on the block, and it's about time that The Legend of Zelda experimented with something like this. Suffice to say, we can't wait for more. And there you have it, everything you might need to know about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. What are you expecting from this highly anticipated sequel? And what do you think about a possible villain change? Feel free to let us know in the comments section down below.